I'm Kate Ayers. I'm the Executive Director at Reestablish Richmond, and I have had a lot of really great light bulbs go on for me already learning today. It was really great to be with a lot of you this morning. And today's session is going to be a little bit extended. So we have two professionals with us, Brian Davis and Jeffrey Elmore, who are going to talk about adult education and Capital Region workforce and the employment opportunities that are out there, but sometimes underutilized by our newcomer population. And then at the end, we're going to have a little mini bonus session by Sheba Adley, one of Reestablish Richmond's client engagement specialists, who's been working with a really cool program with VCU that we want to make sure everybody knows about. So as always, we are excited to have you here. This session is going to be about an hour long. All the same things apply. Please keep yourself on mute unless you have a question. If you have questions that go unanswered, please make sure they get put in the chat. We will absolutely try to follow up after this meeting to make sure that you get everything answered. But I am just really excited to welcome Brian Davis as one of our presenters today. Brian is the Executive Director of the Capital Region Workforce Partnership, which he's held since 2014. He has a very long list of credentials that really makes it, I feel very lucky that we get to have his expertise and understanding of the different career pathways that people can take across the state of Virginia. And we have been working with him most recently with the closing of Tyson's, and he was really integral at making sure all of those folks who lost their jobs after the closing of Tyson's were able to find new career pathways. And I'd like to also introduce to you Jeffrey Elmore. Jeffrey is the lead of the Capital Region Adult Education for Region 15. He's the regional program manager. He oversees all of the adult education programs in our locality in the region. And Reestablish Richmond has recently been partnering with him and his teachers to hold our English classes, which I think have had some really great outcomes through that partnership. So I'm excited to talk and encourage discussions after this session. If you hear something that you'd like to continue, I know that Jeffrey and Brian would be open to having those conversations. So I'm gonna stop talking and let them get started. I will, again, this session will run until about 4:30, and then Sheba will join us for the last 10 to 15 minutes to share with you all a cool project she's been working on.
Did you want to jump first, Jeffrey? Clearly, we did a lot of practice on this ahead of time together.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I appreciate that. Yeah, all that practice is paying off. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeffrey Elmore. I'm the Regional Program Manager for Capital Region Adult Education. We are the state and federally funded adult education provider serving the 7 counties in the workforce region along with the city of Richmond. Just so that you know, the 7 counties are, and I gotta count them on my fingers: Hanover, Henrico, Powhatan, Goochland, New Kent, Charles City, Chesterfield. Did I get them all, Brian?
I used the alphabet, and I think you went off alphabet, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I went way off alphabet.
I have a map on my slide, so I'll back up whatever you missed.
Matter of fact, you've got the map right behind you.
I do.
Anyway, it's a big region, and we certainly have a lot of programming. I'll tell you just a little bit of general information about our programming. We are an adult ed program. The age range is typically 18 years old to about 65 years old. We can serve people as young as 16, but they must be, so for 16 and 17-year-olds, the folks have to have been released from compulsory attendance by a superintendent. For folks that are like in the 18 to 23 year range, they cannot be enrolled in a K-12 program. So as long as they're not part of a K-12 program, we're happy to provide services. Uh, we offer two main groupings of service. One are adult basic education and GED classes, leading to that high school equivalency. And the second one, which most of you are probably more interested in, are our English as a second language classes. Throughout the region, we offer programming at all levels, from folks who don't know any English at all the way up to folks who are advanced and are looking to, just sort of tune their language ability, or, manage some of the idioms and really specific things, maybe specific to our region. Anyway, we're at all levels. We offer programming that's both online and in person. Uh, Across the region, you'll find classes offered morning, day, evening. Our goal really is to meet students, those adult students, where they are. We recognize that adult students are busy in their lives with work schedules, with childcare, with transportation challenges, with challenges getting to know the area, and we really try to be there as much as we can to address all of that. I will say, however, uh, things can sometimes shift around. A lot of that is because we really operate on a class-based model as opposed to delivering individual tutoring. And so Henrico may say that they're going to open 4 classes at the Regency Adult Ed Center from 9 a.m. till noon, and it turns out it's only 3 classes. And that's really because enrollment was low, and they can only fill those 3. Typically, we're looking at classes that are about 12 to 25 students per class, but sometimes we can go a little bit smaller, depending on the need, depending on what's going on. I will add, enrollment is open right now for Henrico, Chesterfield, Richmond, and Hanover. Chesterfield fills up fast. Chesterfield may already be full, but I know Henrico is open. I know Richmond is open. And excitingly, especially for Brian, we are getting ready to open a couple of ESL classes at the workforce centers. I'll give you more information about that here in a second. I've got a QR code that interested students can tell us which one and what time and that kind of thing. We're really looking right now to build a critical mass so we can have those classes. Along with the basic things that you'd expect from ABE, GED, and ESOL classes, we can also provide some specific help. Students come into a class and they're like, hey, I'm looking for ESL, but I'd also like to improve my digital literacy skills, or if they need to update their resumes, or if they come in with a real specific challenge, like they communicate that they were a welder in Afghanistan. They're trying to both improve their English and pass a welding certification here in the US, but they're struggling with the welding textbook that's in English. Our teachers could certainly help out with things like that. Anyway, I'm excited to answer your questions, talk about programming. Like Kate said, we will do specific programming for organizations. Kate and I got together, I guess it was a year and a half ago or so, and started talking about what we could do to help each other out. And since that time, we've had 2 classes specifically for Reestablish Richmond, one earlier in the spring, one going on right now. The one that's going on now, we're really excited about because it's really a family literacy class. Reestablish Richmond was able to provide both childcare and transportation. And we recognize that so many of the refugees that they serve have young children, and they want to help their children. They want to learn how to read to their kids in English. They want to understand better what it's going to be like to get their kids involved in school. And so now we've got a 12-week program that has the teacher for the first couple of hours of class, working just with the parents or caregivers. And then for the last hour of class, the kids come into the class and it's parents and children together. And the parents are really working with the kids on things that they have learned themselves previously in the setting with the teacher. Um, anyway, that's a little bit about Cap Region Adult Ed. Brian, you ready?
I am. First, we're gonna do a little technology test here. Did I pass? Can
Hey, you
people
passed.
see some slides? Woo! All right. So Brian Davis, we go by many names. We just show up to work and whatever name someone refers to as long as it's a nice name, we'll typically answer. My organization is called the Capital Region Workforce Partnership. There are 14 total local workforce areas in Virginia. Virginia Career Works is the statewide brand that we all operate under. So the idea there is whether you're in Norfolk or Danville or Northern Virginia, we're all our front door, our service line is branded as Virginia Career Works. So for our physical workforce centers, you will see that red bird flying over top of our building somewhere, maybe multiple places. Got a little bit of a delay, so we're going to do it this way. Real quick history lesson on federal government-y stuff. We were created under a federal piece of legislation back in 2014, Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. And it creates a national network, as I said, of local workforce areas. We are jointly governed by local elected officials and then privately led workforce development boards. And you can see there that our general function is to be what I call the matchmaker between job seekers, whether they're already working, whether they're unemployed, maybe they're underemployed, earning wages that aren't family sustaining. And we kind of meet each individual similar to Jeffrey where they are. We do a very individualized service plan, and it's actually called an individual employment plan, that does a quick assessment of what needs they might have and how we can help them. As I mentioned, this just shows you how geographically Virginia is divided into those 14 areas. There is a state workforce board that sits above us. They are appointed by the governor. And then, as I mentioned, each of those different regions has its own workforce board and consortium of elected officials. I made my slides bigger. I finally figured out how. So the map that Jeffrey and I are fortunate, we have the same service region. We have the 8 jurisdictions that you see there on the map. Some areas aren't as fortunate. There are some areas that might have 3 different adult education programs operating within their boundaries. And then we also have a host of other partners who each have their own geographic boundaries, whether it's community college. For example, in these 8 jurisdictions, we're served by 2 different community colleges, Bright Point and Reynolds. Just a quick slide on our funding. So this is the funding specific to the Capital Region in the current year. We're looking at about $5.2 million. The bulk of that money is derived from federal funds that come down through the U.S. Department of Labor, about $4.8 million. And then we supplement that with what we call our non-federal funds. Just quickly, our funding comes in 3 different program streams, adult, dislocated worker, and youth, and I'll talk a little more about the distinctions between those. So we know in general that we're like a matchmaker, right? We have employers that have jobs and we have individuals looking for jobs. So it's always important for us to be mindful of the labor market information in our area. So you can see here regional population, a little over 1 million, over 600,000 people in the labor force. So that is what the Department of Labor considers that working age population of individuals who could be working. And then the number of people we actually have working in this region, you can see 611,000. That leaves us an unemployment rate, and this is December of 2023, of 2.8%. So we have what is considered a healthy economy in the Richmond region. A lot of economists will tell you any area that's at 3% or below, they consider that to be full employment. Meaning anybody that wants to be working could be working. What we're going to discuss, obviously, is that is not the case, and there are several reasons for that. So I have a board member who always likes to go beyond the percentages into numbers. How many people are we talking about? So that 2.8% unemployment rate equals a little under 18,000 people. At the same time, for the same month, December of 2023, there were 46,200 job openings posted in our region, in our 8 jurisdictions. So simple math, that gives you a ratio of 2.6 jobs for every 1 unemployed person. We're going to talk a little bit more about why that's not exactly an exact math or true story of the picture of the challenges, even with a healthy economy, that we might have here. But at the surface, you might look at that and say, we're doing pretty good. Anybody that is looking for a job should be able to find a job. This gives you a little drill down. We have access to a private vendor, Chimera Economics, that has a tool called real-time intelligence that goes out and pulls all of the online job postings that are out there and slices and dices in many ways. So this shows you in order position types by the number that are available. And you can see registered nurses #1, and you can go down the line. Initial glance here, this tells us some good things, right? We have occupations with different levels of educational requirements, right? Some require advanced degrees, maybe a bachelor's degree, maybe an associate's degree, but there are also a lot of job opportunities out there that may just be looking for a high school diploma and perhaps some form of post-secondary credential, like a certification from one of the community colleges, perhaps. And in the online, if this was a live shot, we are able to click on the number, and then it will show us where those jobs are, who they're with, how much they're paying, and give us a lot more detail below the surface. What I wanted to show here was the top certifications, and you'll see that, again, these are not 100% college, right? #1 is driver's license. Can people drive? Basic life support. Even if you're not in a healthcare environment, let's say industrial manufacturing, they would like their employees to be able to do CPR and some basic life support if necessary. Then you'll see the mix. You do get some very occupation specific requirements, and commercial driver's license is actually the biggest credential that we help individuals with currently. And then we also know that a lot of employers, more and more, are saying, look, just give me someone who's going to show up, right? I'll teach them the things that they need to learn to do, what they need to do on the job. Just give me that individual that has some work ethic, that wants to come to work every day. So the system divides them into hard skills and soft skills, and we could debate, what's hard and what's soft, but this is what the system we use kind of breaks them out by. So communication, team player, customer oriented, organized, problem solving. If you're standing on the manufacturing line watching the widgets and the belt stopped, do you just stand there and wait for the belt to start again? Or do you have, some problem solving abilities to try to figure out how to get it moving again? So these are some of the characteristics when we do a deeper dive, though, of our working age population and where we might have some challenges to suggest that not everybody that wants to be working is working. Okay. So some of these things you'll see here, the unemployment rate, first of all, is a lot of people are not aware. It's a survey, right? So the Department of Labor calls individuals every month. And to be called, you have to be drawing unemployment benefits, first of all, and then actively seeking work for the period that they called you. So that is going to miss a lot of people who are not working, but maybe want to be working. Maybe they were on unemployment, but their benefits have expired and they're no longer receiving benefits. So they're not going to show. Individuals who maybe have no attachment to the workforce are not going to show in that number. So at the other end, there's a data point called the labor participation rate. And right now, that's a little under 70%. It took a hit during COVID. It was down around 62%. It's back up to 67%. That's not a true rate either, because everyone, again, on the other end of the spectrum that could be working maybe doesn't need to work or doesn't want to work. So I tell my board the true unemployment rate is somewhere between 3% and 30%. And it's very hard to pinpoint exactly where that number is. Then you can look at the other boxes there. In our region alone, there are almost 89,000 people who do not have a high school diploma. 20,000 speak English less than well. This statistic is something that is starting to, I think, get more and more attention. By 2030, there will be more people over 55 than there are under 19, right? So that's not something the workforce system can fix, right? We can't encourage individuals to start having more kids. And then on the supply side, we are a region and a country of small employers. So 95% of our employers here have fewer than 50 employees. And why that is an issue is they're so busy and focused on keeping their shop running that they don't have time to even find out what resources are out there to be able to help them. You know, you might be running a machine shop where your purchasing manager is also your HR director, and then they also do 3 other things. So that kind of sets the context for what our system is intended to do. Again, is help both businesses and job seekers close those gaps. So we operate a little differently than Jeffrey's program in that we have retail storefronts. We have workforce centers where services are available to both job seekers and employers. And you can see they are located in the East End, the South Side, and in the near West End, next to Willow Lawn. We also, during COVID, like most places, we launched a virtual platform of services where individuals can access certain services and staff interactions through the internet. And then for our outer counties, we also do arrangements with libraries in terms of making services available and accessible out there. Not going to spend a lot of time on this. Our service providers are the ones who are directly touching individuals. The board, myself, and my direct staff are prohibited from providing services. So some of you may be familiar with organizations such as Equus Workforce Solutions, Ross Innovative Employment Solutions, who are our direct service providers. When we get into what those services are, you'll see that they're divided into 2 categories: basic and individual career services. The blue, the basic, those are 100% universal to anybody who walks into one of our centers. There are no eligibility requirements to get those basic light touch services: job search assistance, help with the resume, interview techniques, workshops. If we've, again, like Jeffrey, if we've got enough volume, we can run a basic computer skills class. Jeffrey mentioned that they'll be offering ESL classes in our centers. We partner with a lot of individuals. For example, Senior Connections is doing a basic computer skills class for individuals 55 and older in our centers. They have also said, you know, if we have room and you've got someone who's 37 that wants to sit in the class, you know, send them along. The green services are where we do get into a situation where an eligibility has to be determined. So we are federally funded to get into that higher touch of services where you're working with a staff member to develop that individual plan and then to attach services to that plan that will move you along. There needs to be an eligibility determination. So, you know, this is kind of the distinction when we're noticing someone might need a little heavier touch and assistance to help them get that job that they're looking for. And that could be just through doing some assessments to figure out what their interest, aptitudes, and abilities are, give them some coaching and career planning advice. Training assistance is one of our big ticket items. We can pay for tuition. And again, we're not in the bachelor's degree business, but we do work with individuals a lot on those short-term certifications that are going to give them some industry recognized credential that's going to bump them up in the wage earning potential. We can also provide supportive services while they're with us, whether that's childcare, transportation, maybe they just need a good set of interview clothing. If they are in a training activity, we can pay for the books, the supplies that they need to participate in that. We also, for those individuals that I mentioned don't have attachment to the workforce, we offer what we call paid work experience. And they're basically like internships where we develop a worksite agreement with an employer who's going to allow them to come on site and gain that type of work experience. And then hopefully the hope is that they will then hire them and bring them on as a full-time employee. What I wanted to hit on here was the eligibility, again, to get to the higher touch services. For our adult program and the dislocated worker program, you can see that top bar is universal for both. And so our basic eligibility, and this was defined by the federal government, not something that we locally established. An individual for these programs must be 18 or older, eligible to work in the United States, and registered with Selective Service, if applicable. On the adult side, while it's not an eligibility requirement to be enrolled, the priority of service must be given to those who are either low income or basic skills deficient. So that means if we get to a point where we declare that our funds are limited, we have to rank order all those individuals that we've enrolled and start giving services first to those who are low income or basic skills deficient. On the dislocated worker side, that is for individuals who have lost a job through no fault of their own. So there's been a plant closing, like Kate mentioned, the Tyson closing, or a relocation or a layoff, maybe not a full plant closing. And then you'll see at the bottom, veterans and their spouses receive priority of service in all of our programs. On the youth side, it's a little more complicated, we'll say. The age range, you can see we could go as low as 14 all the way up to 24. And the youth can be either in school or out of school. The federal law does require that 75% of our youth funds go to that out of school population, those individuals who have either completed school and are not actively employed or enrolled in post-secondary school, or they may have dropped out. And there's a wide net of eligibility requirements there. You can see it's an unfortunate term, but the law calls those barriers. So an individual to come into our youth program must be determined to have one of those characteristics in order to be enrolled. The types of services are similar to our adult, but you'll see some things that are a little more connected to the age group in terms of leadership, development, mentoring. If they don't have the diploma or GED, we're certainly going to connect them with Jeffrey to help them with that piece of their service plan. And then I wanted to hit on the documentation with this group, the documentation on the eligible to work in the United States, you can see here. And basically it's, you know, anybody who's dealt with an I-9, we are able to use that same list or combination. So, you know, list A, combination of B and C, birth certificate, and you can read down the line there. So for some individuals, depending on how they entered the country, they may have those things, and they may have already been prearranged as part of the initial entry into the country, or some individuals may not have those items. And we do work, again, case by case, to help individuals, if they don't have that documentation, help them find where they can obtain it. Some other potential areas where the resettlement community and our community may be able to interplay is again through that documentation. There may be language issues. You know, on a case-by-case basis, we do not have the resources or the bandwidth to have interpreters on site every day, you know, for individuals that might walk in. What we do, and I realize it may not be the best service, you all may know better, we do have the language line. So we have the language boards in each of our front desks where an individual, if they don't speak English, they're able to point to the language that they do speak, and we're able to connect them with an interpreter at that entry point. That has typically been sufficient to get that initial encounter covered, and then that also gives us time to work out an interpreter situation moving forward with their service plan. Bigger scale events like Kate mentioned, when the Tyson facility announced that they were closing, we learned early on that there were 4 different languages other than English spoken at that facility. So for the mass events that we did, we worked with Kate's organization to find interpreters who could be on site, particularly for our job fairs and hiring events, to help individuals who might have needed that. The other big challenge that we have is crosswalking an individual's education and work experience from another country and translating that into what American employers are more used to looking at. And again, that's very individualized case by case, but we, you know, our talent development specialists and career coaches have access to a lot of tools where they can do that crosswalking and mapping of, okay, here's what you did, here's how we might want to reference it in your resume. This is, I mean, we're federally funded, so we are a world of, we have to track our outputs and our outcomes. The volume in our workforce centers has more than doubled in the past year, and you can see that's been across the board in all 3 of our centers. Also across the board, both new enrollments, people coming in, and our active caseload is on the increase. Number of business services we're offering, people that we are putting into those training activities and those paid internships. On the outcome side, we're graded for job placement, retention, credentials, measurable skills gains, and you can see that we have been fortunate to be very successful in helping those individuals who enroll with us and then have exited at the completion of their service plan. 84% of them are placed in employment, 80% retain their jobs, 64% credential rate, and measurable skills gains. In addition to those services that I just talked to that we directly control, we are also responsible for coordinating with this whole alphabet soup that you see here of other organizations that do workforce services. And the idea is to bring as many resources to bear through a system instead of, well, minimizing individuals from having to go to several different locations. So some organizations have to be on site with us. Other organizations do not, but they still have to have an agreement with us on how they're going to coordinate their services within our system. And I know I said a lot really fast. So I think Jeffrey and I and Kate certainly too, I think we wanted to spend at least an equal amount of time, maybe just talking about any questions that Jeffrey or I raised or solutions that you all might have for some of those um intersection points that I mentioned. And I'm gonna stop
Hey,
sharing.
Yeah, I
before we
definitely
go,
would love to hear from folks. Sorry, Jeffrey. This morning we heard from the leader from the Afghan Association of Central Virginia, and she identified career and career pathways as sort of her number one area of need that she sees. And so, I know that there's barriers, as there always is, to accessing like government programming for various reasons. So I just would love to hear from people what they're seeing, what the barriers are, how they can be overcome, those kinds of things.
well, hey, before we go too much farther,
Yes.
while we were all listening to Brian, I was plopping a few things into the chat. These include our Cap Region Adult Ed website, which has the addresses and sites of all the big local programs. Um, it's also got a link to our form for people to tell us about that they're interested in programming. The next thing that I put in the chat was our ESL class interest form. If folks use that, they can tell me about what they want in one of those career work centers. We're populating that right now, and hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll have some ESL classes starting up in the workforce centers. Below that is my general form for people interested in any of our services. This is also the link that's in the middle of our website. But if they use that, they can tell us where they want something, when they can participate in classes, and we'll get them plugged into the programming that they need. Last thing I've got on there is my own email address. If you're a program and you're interested in getting something started, like what I've done with Kate and Reestablish Richmond, give me an email. We'll go have a cup of coffee and start talking about how we could partner together.
Thank you. And I do see a question in the chat. What
Yep.
kind of industries, professions through internship do you offer to job seekers?
Right. So we develop what we call a list of targeted industries and occupations. And that is a requirement, again, set forth in the law that my board and every board out there, because, economies are different in every region. And the intention is that our resources are aligned to those occupations and industries that are in demand in this area. The most general overstated analogy is, we don't want to use resources to assist someone in basket weaving if that was something they would want to do. We focus individuals to our area's targeted industries, which for the capital region are advanced manufacturing, logistics, healthcare, and then professional, scientific, and technical jobs. And that's just looking at the types of jobs that are both currently in demand and projected to grow in the future. We have kind of a secondary tier on our list that would include construction and the trades. Hospitality is a huge economic force in this region. The reason that is a secondary tier is because the wages tend to be lower and the turnover tends to be higher. So my board has kind of placed that grouping in that secondary tier where we will still assist employers and individuals, but maybe some of our dollar investments are a little less than they are with the top tier. And so when I say dollar investments, for example, a training voucher, or even the work experience activity, we're going to set a higher dollar cap for those top tier industries and then a lower dollar cap for secondary ones.
Hey, I'd like to add some information about specific programming that's available through adult ed, sort of in conjunction sometimes with the workforce center. These are called integrated education and training programs. And these are designed to get people credentialed and into the workforce in a relatively short amount of time. And what they do is they bring together a workforce trainer who's connected to licensure, credentialing, something like that, and an adult education professional who is tied into basic skills or ESL, something like that. And we work together in, a 12-week, a 15-week program to get the cohort of students up to speed in their basic skills, which could be English language skills or could be simply reading, writing, mathematics, and to get them a very specific licensure credential. And it could be something from healthcare like CNA, it could be an electrical license. It could be something from hospitality, such as a Serve Safe certification. Um, but it sort of supercharges people's ability to get into the workforce, getting that credential, getting their basic skills up to speed, and getting them to work. And again, if you've got a group of people who you think this would be a good solution for, send me an email and we can start that conversation.
And maybe just to open ourselves up here, Jeffrey, if there are individuals who have encountered our services or workforce systems, and you identified challenges, it would be great to know what those were and see if we can talk through potential ways to address those.
Yeah, sure.
It's also likely you may not have been aware of our services, which I hope has changed now that you've heard us for the last 45 minutes.
I know that often language is a barrier, and I know that you are offering interpretation at the workforce service, at the workforce center, at least on the language line. But um, I keep on going back to, it's not just a spoken language barrier, but maybe a written and reading and writing language barrier to access some of these, because a lot of the pathways require testing. Is that, am I understanding that is really, and do you all have resources for that? Or yeah, I'd just like to hear a little bit more about that part.
So again, I'll reference Tyson. We did have translation of documents. I'm not sure if you saw them, but we did. Now we had to contract with an organization because we're not going to use Google Translate for something important like that. So we did get materials translated into those 4 languages to get some of that information more accessible to the population out there at Tyson. We, I hate to say it this way, but every year we go through a series of different types of monitorings and by the state and the federal government. The language, the only language for this region that we are required to translate everything into is Spanish right now. And they base that on the percent of the population that speaks a language. So if you hit a certain threshold, then you have that requirement. So we do have, for the Spanish speaking in the region, we do have a lot of materials translated. And we do have bilingual staff in 2 of our centers that speak Spanish.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions, live questions or questions in the chat? Let me see. I do see one. What is the best way to refer an individual to the workforce center? Have you already answered that?
I didn't, but I can drop. We do have an online referral form on our website. that I will get the link for. So talk amongst yourselves or ask other questions while I'm looking that up. But yeah, you could either do that or on our website too, where I dropped the link. You know, certainly calling one of the centers would be the old school way to do it. And then we do have a referral form.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm curious for the group. How many of you have had clients or students or just folks associated with you who have accessed services provided by Cap Region Adult Ed?
I'm not seeing anything in the chat yet. Here we go.
No, that's me.
I'm here. I don't think I've heard anyone.
Well, Kate, you and everybody else that's reestablished ought to be raising your hand because
Yeah, we have sent people. Yes, sorry. For sure. And I have a couple more questions coming in. I know someone who's a refugee who speaks English well, but cannot read English. So this kind of gets back a little bit to what I was saying. Are there services for this? Is it part of ESL, even though she speaks well?
sure, we can do that. You know, for somebody that speaks English well, uh, depending on what they wanted to do, we might plug them into a GED class. You know, reading and social studies and science are really all just reading in a content area tests on the GED. And although that person may already have a high school diploma or post-secondary or higher credential, we could certainly work them into class and you know help out with their reading ability.
Thank you. And then I have another question. Oh, I have referred some people there before. We got to reestablish Richmond. Thank you, Jyoti. What are the 4 languages you needed during the Tyson's closing? What were those languages at Tyson's?
I was hoping Jeffrey could talk longer. I was looking that up. I know Spanish, French, Farsi, and I'm drawing a blank on the 4th one.
I bet Dari and Pashto were in there. There were an awful lot of folks from Afghanistan, and just in my basic experience working with the large Afghan population
Yeah.
here, they're all either Dari or Pashto.
And maybe Arabic, maybe. I know that there were some Sudanese folks at one point.
Oh, I've got the list. Now, this is not to say there weren't more, but we translated materials into Arabic, Dari, English, French, and Spanish.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you, Jeffrey and Brian. You know, there's just so many resources out there in this space, and I am really interested in how we can get more newcomers to benefit from them. And that kind of flows into our little bonus session that we're going to have. I'd like to introduce to you Sheba Adley. Sheba is Reestablished Richmond's client engagement coordinator, and we were able to bring her on right after the Afghan evacuation to address some of the needs of that growing population that came into Richmond in 2021. And Sheba has been doing a lot of things with Reestablished Richmond. She's oriented and provided workshops in Dari and to our Afghan clients and teaching them the process of how to get a driver's license. I dare say she's helped hundreds of Afghan women learn about that process and get the resources they need to start learning that process. But outside of that, as her work actually, interestingly, when I first met Sheba, we went her first 2 week in the United States. She said, I want to go to college. And I took her to J. Sargent Reynolds straight away and said, here's where you want to go and end up. And she is definitely has utilized services through there. But she also has provided the feedback of, wow, I wish I had known about some of the programs and services that already existed in Richmond around career development and especially around accreditation. And as many of you all heard at the breakfast this morning, I'll bring it up again. The Afghan population, that's one of the biggest needs they've identified is being able to begin in their careers here in the United States after having long professional careers in Afghanistan. And so we were recently able to connect with VCU in a program, and Sheba began working with our clients who are interested in educational credential evaluations. And so Sheba's here to share with you about that work and sort of the impact and the kinds of support we saw were needed so that clients could access this credential evaluation. So I'm going to turn it over to Sheba, and I'm going to ask the question, can everybody see the screen? Yes. Okay, cool.
Thank you for a nice introduction. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and share about credential evaluation more. I will promise I will not take it more since I'll be meeting back to back. I will start with introduction of Westgate. Westgate is a education service as a nonprofit organization that provide credential evaluation for international students and immigrants. It's based on Canada, and it's the largest credential evaluation service in the globe. They're evaluating the credential diploma service outside of the Canada and United States. And also it provides a report that demonstrates their education equivalence in these countries for the purpose of education or employment or immigration. How is VCU? We have a partnership with VCU, and VCU has a partnership with Westgate. Westgate have a program for Gateway that they are process the education for individual who is result of the circumstance country education who limited prove their academic achievement, who works with this partner and identify the qualification of individual education for this partner, like for people, for individual who education in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Turkey, Ukraine, and Venezuela. And Reestablish Richmond try to navigate all the process for submitting with VCU and Westgate for all our clients so far. Next, please. Yeah. The eligibility, like everyone can receive credential evaluation, like especially the countries that mentioned who was covered through the West Gateway program. And also, like if anyone requests for credential evaluation and individually there's a fee, by having like referral with Reestablish Richmond, this fee will waive. Next, please. And the documentation we need, like we need the degree, diploma, certificate, or the license they want to receive the credential evaluation. They have to have transcript and mark sheet or a statement of grade that shows like how many credits individual have. And we also need a professional license certificate, like especially since a big group of our clients from Afghanistan, like they are very specific, like with Afghanistan, there's 22 universities that they are doing the documentation, but sometimes there's some there's some document issues since they are not able to get any documentation proof. We unfortunately not able to do like anything to receive their evaluation, the credential evaluation with them. Next. We have created a partnership with VCU since last year, 2023. especially with program manager Rachel Aziz to navigate
Rachel.
it. And we have Rachel in here for more concern as well here. If there's any more question, we try to like pave the way for individual like smoothly like navigate. If anyone you know like they need the navigation support, they can submit a referral from the established Richmond, and they have to check like credential evaluation in here. Once we receive the credential evaluation refill in our end, we start. Okay, for next. We start our intake. During the intake, we are taking all the information. We get all information from client. There we are collecting the all document as a soft copy of like their transcript, diploma, and try to schedule a meeting with Rachel Aziz, as Rachel Aziz is referral agent for Westgate like since 2022. Sorry, can you? During this Zoom session, we provide the language assistant for every individual. And also like once we submit the application, first we are creating an account for any individual who need credential evaluation. Then we submit all the document during this time that they are receiving like any problem. We are follow up with Westgate and also with VCU, with client, like once they receive their credential evaluation. Please, next. We try to guide them through the process of admission to university or college, and we are giving some very basic overview of financial aid and also the opportunity like to connect with an advisor. Like some of we make some connection through the, especially with international student advisor with some of the college and university around Richmond to make this process smoother for our client. Next, please. We are also in a process, as I mentioned before, like there's some exception, there's some limitation with Westgate evaluation because especially with Afghan client, they're not receiving like everyone have a credential certificate or license. The Westgate just known like 22 of university in Afghanistan. We are collecting some information and we are in a process to find some other licensed organization to focus on credential evaluation and to help those folks and apply for credential evaluation. Next. So for the outcome, since we start like last year, this program, we accepted more than 30 referrals for credential evaluation, and we submit the application for 28 individual, and we received 20 credential evaluation so far, and we have some still in the process. There's 4 application rejects due to like less document for Westgate, and we 7 of our client like joined the university and college. They want to study, continue their school over here.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to give me share all the information. If there's any question, I'm happy to and also Rachel is in their Zoom if she want to add something more that I can miss the information.
Rachel, do you want to say anything about the partnership or the, what the process has been like when you've had someone like Sheba assisting clients navigating the process?
Oh, sure. I think Sheba and I really have a great partnership. It's been really great working with her because we can support each other. I have the resources from the university and the partnership with West Gateway. Sheba makes it easier for the clients because she helps them with interpreter services. Sometimes she interprets for them herself, and kind of helps to facilitate communication as well, between me and the client. And so it's been really great working with her. It also helped to keep us, I think, organized, the two of us working together in the referral process, rather than having, her just send a bunch of people my way. But I also I get referrals from some other areas as well, but I think Sheba and I have been really productive in our partnership in the past couple of years. So
Thank you,
Awesome,
Reggie.
thank you. What kind of questions do you all have?
I will add one thing that Sheba mentioned about documentation, that some of the Afghans have had some more difficulty getting credential evaluations. Some of that has to do with lack of information that the credential evaluation service has over certain period, like the education system during certain periods of time in Afghanistan. So especially if you were working with an older client who maybe attended university during the time of the Taliban, when they were in control of some of the colleges, universities, they just don't have access to that information about the curriculum. So it makes it difficult for them to really piece together a formal history. There's also, in some cases, if there's a private university that's not as recognized in Afghanistan, then that makes it more difficult as well. But most of the larger public universities, we haven't really had many problems with. Sometimes occasionally you'll find documents that are missing a few pieces of information and we have to go back and the client has to try and figure out how to get that information, sometimes very creatively now. But we've been, I'd say that most of the time we're able to assist with those.
We have a question. Who is eligible for this program?
Do you want me to reply, Rachel? The individual who has educated in Afghanistan, Turkey, Syria, Venezuela, and Israel, the countries that they are displaced, the people, those are most eligible for Getaway program.
To give a little bit more background to the Gateway program, so when someone comes to the United States and does a traditional credential evaluation, they go through the process. Typically what the process involves is them contacting someone in their home country at the university, having that university mail official signed documents, transcripts, etc., directly from the university to the credential evaluation service so that they can verify that it's official. So this program was designed recognizing that a lot of people who are displaced either don't have the means of getting those documents now, or it's unsafe for them to do so. So basically, this process, they can submit any copies of documents that they have, doesn't have to be original. So it was meant to assist individuals in those specific kind of situations.
Thank you. Any other questions? I responded. Holly also wanted to know for Reestablish Richmond. So in the PowerPoint, you saw there was a referral link that can be easily found on our website. So if anybody is interested in getting these navigation services, they can go on, they can fill out the referral form and mark that's the support you need. And then we will look at that client, and if we're able to take that client on, we will accept it. And so far, I think it's all been people from Afghanistan. So Sheba has been assigned to those cases. But if it was someone with a different language, I don't know if we've worked with anyone.
Actually, we are working with different language, like
we are.
And from Cuba, yeah, different country, different
Okay.
language.
Okay, so I take it back. It doesn't matter what language they speak.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Also, if you have any Spanish speaking clients, I can speak with them directly without an interpreter if needed.
That's awesome. Any last minute questions? Well, thank you so much, Rachel and Sheba, and Jeffrey and Brian. Thank you everyone who hung on. It's 4:30, after 4:30 on a Friday, and that's hard to do. So thank you for sticking with us. We hope that we get to see some of you back tomorrow morning. Our first session is bright and early. So no one will judge if your camera's off and you're in your PJs, but it's going to be a really cool session. Some national partners from Welcome Corps and that affiliate who's focusing on private sponsorship programs, which is a new way to resettle refugees, will be speaking, as well as the IRC, about their sponsorship program as well. So hopefully you all will have some time to enjoy your Friday evening.